Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about shows of the supernatural, fantasy, or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Sleepy Hollow, the latest episodes of Grimm, the Vampire Diaries, as well as the originals. Starting off with this season finale of Sleepy Hollow, we have a continuation of the whole situation with Betsy Ross and Ichabod. Essentially, the plan is not to tell her about what they're doing. The fact is that they're from the future, because if they tell her that and she finds out all this information, because they have to return her to original time. But if they do tend her back to original time with this new knowledge, then it's going to have catastrophic effects on the present, because it's like Abby kind of knows. Crane tells her this, but Abby kind of knows this already. Which Crane references like a Star Trek movie, which I thought was very interesting, because Abby, was referencing Star Wars, but he's like, not Star Wars, Star Trek. It's very interesting that she would get that wrong and he'd get it right. But it's very nice, and essentially they pretended like they didn't know. What I was, I know I kind of blanked on what I was saying before. What I was trying to say is, Abby's kind of done the time traveling thing, season 2 finale, so she kind of has a slightly good understanding of that, I guess. I mean, granted, all the stuff she did when she time traveled kind of probably most likely had disastrous effects. Granted, I don't think that really came up that affected the timeline in any shape or form. But they were able to fix the box, and they were able to send Betsy Ross on her way, which, Betsy was under an impression that Crane was in love with Abby, that Abby was his, because he used the word partner. Which I'm still like, even after this episode, I'm like, I don't think he was in love with her. He cared deeply for her because she's like his best friend. I don't think it was like that type of love. Personally, I'm thinking like, they have Betsy kind of misinterpret that. I mean, and Crane let her misinterpret it. And he's like, now he understands, like, when she came back from the catacombs, like, why she was so distant towards him was because of this. I mean, because granted, he was saying like this was a secret mission given to him by Washington. Like I said, they were keeping her under the guise that they were still like from the 1700s. That the war was still going on. So sadly, the key that they needed to, to fix Pandora's box, to take down the hidden one, is it needed the soul of a witness, and it took part of Abby's soul in the catacombs. But when they try to bring the box back and give it to Pandora to use, it wasn't strong enough because it only got part of Abby's soul, so it ended up giving all of it, and she's sacrificing herself again. They took down the hidden one. I mean, mainly Jenny landed the final blow, which kind of pissed Pandora off, because she's like, it was my vengeance to get, not yours. I mean, mainly dealing with the whole Joe situation. But then Pandora kind of betrays them. She's like, I'm going to become a benevolent goddess. Like, I'm not going to make the same mistake my husband did. He got obsessed with power. I won't, be like that. As long as people worship me and allow me to rule them, then there's no problem. Because she even goes to like a church or something and kind of like basically saying like, I can remove all your fear, or I can bring all your fear to life, essentially. It was kind of like crappy on her part. I really thought it was a very interesting how Crane ended up fighting her. He brought the Horseman, because we haven't seen the Horseman since like the very beginning of the season when she captured him. I'm surprised they didn't do something more with that. Like, the Headless Horseman is Abraham, but, that didn't really come up because Crane was just controlling him into fighting Pandora, which he ends up, doing. He ends up killing Pandora. But with Pandora dying, the box explodes. Because we end up finding out that Abby, is in that other world, which is very nice, because she meets and gets to talk with Corbin, and it's just like, he talks about how he's so proud of her, and then Joe's there, and he goes off to hug Joe, and it's just like, beautiful, beautiful moment. And then it gets sadder because, the box explodes, and Abby says basically, there's no coming back from her. This isn't the end of her journey, but as a witness, it is. Like, she still has other stuff. She still has more of a journey to do, but, this witness stuff is something Crane's going to have to, carry on the torch. And just, the whole thing just bringing tears, almost bringing tears to my eye. I had to fight back the tears, because it's just like, and I like the kind of flash forwards and flashbacks. Like, it's like like they take on, like they're still obviously in their same mindset, but they're there and they're like, it's kind of like when Abby first met Crane. She's got the long hair again. I mean, he's got the long hair again. She's in her like deputy uniform from like season 1, and it's just flashing around at different points, with them, and it's just like saying their goodbyes, and she's like, I'll always be with you, she's like basically like all these different people you've come, that've been in your lives, like me, Betsy, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, we're meant to be there in your life to help you push you forward to the next stage. And it's sad, it's just like, no, Abby. And, Crane wakes up, tells Jenny that, Abby's gone. Jenny's there crying. It's just like, it's so heartbreaking, dude. It's like, is this legitimately the last time we're going to see Abby? And it seems like it, because essentially, Crane's dad, Abby's dad talks to Crane, basically explaining that the witness never truly, like, Abby's not coming back, but the essence of the witness that was within her is passed on to someone else, and it's up to Crane to find out who that person is. Like, I won't lie to you, the first person that came to my mind was like, what if it ended up being Sophie? I don't know, I feel like they're setting her up to become something like, else, instead of just being part of the team. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, that's gotta suck for Reynolds. Him and Abby were just getting to a good place. Now she's gone. It's just, we never really got much of that, side, like, no side of that, because it kind of skips over, like, Abby's funeral, so we don't know what was said and how people reacted. Also, what about that whole, now I'm thinking about now that Horseman of Death, like, since he got summoned, like, and Crane kind of sent him away, is that, like, does that mean he's still wandering around? Does that mean he's going to become a problem again? I feel like since you brought him back, that means he's just going to become a problem later on. Because I am a little sad that we never got to see more of the Horsemen. We only got, War, Crane's son, and Abraham as the Horseman of Death. We never got the other two Horsemen, so not unless that's something they plan on bringing back. I don't know. But essentially, Crane has to find the next person who has inherited the witness. So, like I said, it'd be interesting if it was Sophie, but it'd be kind of interesting if they kind of gave him someone that was like the next witness is someone completely different from Abby. Abby was at least a cop. I feel like if the next witness is going to be someone who's a bit of a troublemaker, that's how I feel about it. And also find out that George Washington started a secret group. Their main purpose was to stop the supernatural, but basically Abby's dad is saying, like, they started off with the best of intentions. Not everyone in the group is bad, but there are some evil seeds amongst them. And it seems like the guy who's Reynolds' boss, the one who was looking into Abby, the one that kills Nebbins, we can only assume he's part of that group too. Because he ends up taking Crane, and he said, like, there's someone in DC who wants to talk to you. And Crane, like, do I have a choice in the matter? He's like, officially you do, but I'd kind of prefer if you didn't cause him a trouble. So they end up taking Crane away. So he's like, whoever you are, he's talking, saying to the new witness, I will find you. So I don't know if this show is being picked up for a 4th season or not. I haven't looked at the time of me recording this. I haven't looked it up. I really hope it does, because it's like, I'm quite interested to see where the story goes from here. It's like, especially now it's continuing without Abby, so it's a little heartbreaking. I'm interested to see what challenges they come across now. They took down Moloch, and now they ended up taking down, a god. So it's like, where do you go from here? Now moving on to this week's episode of Grimm, where this week's case has Nick and Hank. I don't know what the term is for those guys. Basically, they're religious guys that, gather their I guess, quote unquote, flock in tents, and, they kind of do their thing. Well, essentially in this episode, the dude has been, basically he's a Vessin that throughout history, these Vessins have always been referred to as kind of devils because they resemble what people would assume the devil looks like. Monroe even brings up a very interesting thing where he says, like, there were a couple, I think he said, in the lower levels of the Vatican, there were some that were kept there, and every so often they released them out, to put the fear of the devil into people. So, but basically, this guy, he basically goes out in the crowd and he says he's, taking up all their evil, loose, like the devil has control of you, whether you realize it or not. He's there in your life and you can't see him. He's like, I'm taking all that sin and all the devil out of you and then putting it in myself. And so he vogues and then he unvogues to kind of make it look like he fought back the devil. And it brought up an interesting question of like, yes, he's technically deceiving people, but is it necessarily wrong what he's doing? Because he is giving people hope, He does make their lives a little brighter because they feel good afterwards. So he eases their pain. So he's not necessarily doing a bad thing. I mean, he is manipulating people, but in a positive way at the very least. But his ex-wife led a group of kind of like extremists who really believed him to be the devil because his ex-wife didn't know he was a Vessin. And so essentially her and her people ended up, it was kind of sad because in the end they ended up killing him. And granted, he said, "You saved me," which I guess it's like she saved him from continuing to do this because he did kind of feel bad because he was manipulating people. So maybe that's what she meant. I mean, that's what he meant when he says she saved him. It's kind of sad. I'd be a little pissed. I'm like, you killed me. I'm not even the devil when you killed me. Granted, that's his own thing. I mean, it's kind of sad because it shows you just like how far people will go for their beliefs. In a way, I think that's what this episode kind of reflected, especially because there's one of the guys, basically he sold this Vessin guy out to his ex-wife and them because he knew what they were going to do, trying to kill the devil to release her ex-husband from it. That guy who was getting paid to turn him over ended up killing himself because he felt so bad about what he did because he believed in this guy so much. All of them did. Granted, they were all ex-criminals. Some of his security team were ex-criminals, but he helped change their lives around, so they felt devoted to him and they believed him so strongly. So that's why that guy ended up, dying, which is kind of sad. But it was very, like I said, very interesting how you kind of bring those comparisons together, like how strengthen someone's beliefs could lead them to do something like that. They killed him because they truly believed he was a devil. So there was give and take with his scheme. It helped out a lot of people, but it brought the situation to his doorstep. Because if he had not been pretending to be like a devil, he wouldn't be dead right now. Other things that happened in this episode, Eve explained her plan to Nick, Hank, Monroe, and Rosaline, telling them like, oh yeah, I'm going to disguise myself. You remember that time Adeline disguised herself as me and Juliet, and then Juliet became Adeline, and Monroe was kind of making a comment like, yeah, we won't, trust me, we can never forget that. That's always going to be with us. And then she basically told him she was going to do that to, turn into Sean. And then like, oh, that's gotta suck. She's like, she tested it out to see if it works, which is very interesting because I never thought about it before. Because her and Juliet and Adeline, they may not exactly have the same body types, but their body types are pretty close together. For one, they're both females, and but also because they have a somewhat similar build. So yeah, that'll probably suck a little bit, but it's not as bad as turning into Sean because you're turning into someone who has a different, for one, is a different gender, and two, has a different body structure than your own. So I never thought about it. I was like, that is probably definitely painful because your bones, because your whole skeleton, like your skeleton is actually being stretched out because he is taller than Eve, so, she actually had to stretch out, to match his height, so it's gotta be pretty painful. I love just how Rosalind was like, I don't even want to oh God, now I'm thinking about her turning into Sean, and it's like, yeah, you're not going to be able to unthink that. You're going to be thinking about that. You're never going to be able to escape that thought. I also really liked how, because she was, disguising herself as Sean, she went to go to Rachel, to get some information. Sadly, didn't get any because Rachel was too busy trying to make out with her. And I love it because Eve was so uncomfortable. And it's just like, things didn't go that way because they're both in the cover staring up at the ceiling. She's like, it's okay, it happens like that. And Eve's like, obviously disguised as Sean, she's like, that normally doesn't happen to me. It's understandable. This is your first time as a guy, so, it's okay that you don't know how everything works. That's how I was thinking. I just thought it was so funny and how uncomfortable. She's like, but basically Rachel vogued afterwards. I guess they're into that kinky stuff. Like, I wonder, was this their first time? I don't think it was their first time having sex. It had to be like, Sean and her probably done it before, but it's like, because obviously this time she vogued. So is that their thing? They vogue and get it on? But Eve looked kind of like, oh my God, what have I got myself into type of look. So it's very interesting. And we also had Monroe, he brought the cloth to a friend of his to study, and basically they found some messages on it. Like, this is basically, what's it? I think it was Latin or something else. Essentially, there was some writing up there, but it wasn't like in English, obviously, because of how old the cloth is. But basically, two words were on it. One that basically meant miracle, so it explains why it was able to be used on Monroe and heal him. Two, it also has the word, essentially, dangerous. So it's powerful and can be miraculous, but it also, I don't know, to me, I'm interpreting that as the stick has a bad side effect to it. Maybe there's something that's going to happen to Monroe because they used it, or maybe it's like a prolonged use of the stick will have negative effects on somebody. So I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting if it did kind of have like a backlash on Monroe. So far, we haven't seen any, but you never know. And then also in this episode, we had Wu. It seems like he's kind of getting the side effects of that lycanthrope scratch. We hadn't really seen anything of it yet until this episode, because he's feeling like a pain in his neck and his vision's getting all messed up. And it's like, holy crap, like what is going to happen to him? Like, what are the effects of being like, he's a regular person, because the lycanthrope is a disease for blue bod, but it's like, what does it do for a normal person? It kind of sucked because, I mean, Wu kind of was in a situation where he was kind of in a similar situation. Now, when you think about it, all the messed up stuff happens to Wu, because Wu got turned into that. It was back in season 1 when Adeline made those cookies to try and control Hank. Wu took one of them and basically it started messing with him. He started eating random stuff like, for example, like coins, as well as like the stuffing from inside of a pillow, random crap like that. It did something to him. Then there's that whole situation where he first found out about the existence of VIDS in that episode, and basically thought he was crazy until Hank and Nick finally told him the truth. So, and now he's got this situation to deal with. It's like, Wu just can't catch a break, can he? So I'm really interested to see where that goes too, because I felt like, did I bring it up in that episode when they first used the stick on Monroe, or afterwards? Like I was like, oh, they could help Wu with that situation. I don't know. And we also have Adeline. She's still kind of keeping hush hush on the Sean and Diana thing. She did bring up Diana to Nick. She's asking Nick to look into Diana. So far, he hasn't found anything, but he's going to try his best for Adeline because he cares about her, and because she's kind of keeping a hush hush about the whole like conversation her and Sean had. So, because she is interested, she's like, oh, why is he running for mayor? And she's like, is he? There's like, because she brings it up to Nick. She's like, do you trust him? It's like, Nick honestly doesn't know what to do, because it is kind of a weird relationship that Nick has with Sean. Because in the beginning, he trusted Sean. Sean was his captain. He had no reason to trust him. Then finding out who Sean really is, him being like connected to Juliet, because it was that time Juliet had forgotten Nick, and she was madly in love with Sean because of what Adeline did to her. So, not trusting him at that point, especially when he found out that he's actually a prince, from the royal family. But, since then they've kind of worked together. So this is a point where he really doesn't 100% trust Sean, because it's never been like I said, except for the time it hasn't been another point where he's been 100% distrustful of Sean. He's always been let Sean in on the plan and everything. But, part of him wants to give Sean the benefit of the doubt. No matter the case is, like, the fact is he is running for mayor. So whether he was a part of this whole situation from the very beginning or whether he kind of got brought into it, he's still a part of it. So he doesn't trust him 100%. At one point in time, he probably did, but now he's kind of up in the air on whether he should trust Sean or not. I mean, well, actually not, because he decided, like, they're not going to tell Sean anything until they get all the facts straight. So can't wait to see where everything goes from there. So now moving on to this week's episode of the Vampire Diaries. Essentially, we deal with the aftermath of what Nora and Mary Louise did, destroying the stone. Apparently, when they did that, they ended up releasing all of the souls that were hidden inside of the gem. those include like every vampire that was ever sealed in there has been released, and but they didn't necessarily go back to their bodies because when it came to Reina, most vampires she killed, she ended up burning their bodies afterwards, so they don't have bodies to go back to. So a lot of the vampires ended up wandering into random bodies. Like, for instance, there's a vampire who ended up wandering into Stefan's body. He turns out to be like a serial killer. He was a serial killer before he became a vampire, but now he apparently has got, like, when he became a vampire, his new way of killing people is to make, it's like he goes to like what is it, sorority parties or whatever, and he ends up like making everyone kill each other. That's his twisted way of killing. He just simply enjoys it. I thought it was kind of very interesting because it's kind of the whole Joe situation again. Stefan ended up in a human body. He ended up in this guy who's an alcoholic. So the entire time he's in this body, he's dealing with the whole, like, being out there alone in a code and dealing with withdrawals. So that sucks. He brings it up to Damon later on. Like, he remembers how much it sucks being human. He's like, one of the things he missed most was the compulsion ability, kind of being able to get whatever you want and whatever you need whenever you want/need it. But then later on he's eating. He's like, you know what I miss most though? You forget the ecstasy of like eating, like tasting food, the ecstasy that comes with being a human and tasting something delicious. We have a Lark kind of being dragged into this with Valerie. I did like that moment where she's like, trying to use Reina to track down Stefan, and basically she was like, bring me a picture of Stefan. I'm sure Caroline's got one here. And Alora brings her one, and she looks at the picture of Stefan, and Caroline, she's like, you can almost see like the disappointment in her face just looking at it, just, thanks. It didn't seem like it bothered Alaric as much, but, it kind of came up in question later on when they were talking to each other because apparently him and Caroline are going to get married soon. And he's like, yeah, things are going to get complicated with Stefan back in her life. It's like, but even if that, my happy little life, because, got the kids as well as her, he fell in love with her. And he knows, some level it's kind of because of the kids and that, in some part of her heart, she probably still cares for Stefan. Even if things don't work out, he's like, it's fine, It sucks, Stefan being back will complicate things, but if things don't work out, it's whatever. I feel like Valerie's not really the same way because like she probably knew the entire time with Stefan, like that part of him always care for Caroline, that what they had was just because of circumstance, that his feelings for Caroline outweigh his feelings for Valerie. Maybe that's the case, maybe it's not. Maybe he actually does care more for Valerie now, but I feel like it's kind of it's one of those relationships. It was built on circumstance, so. It's because of their situations that led to him and Valerie being together. So, but Stefan isn't the type of guy to just like walk away from someone he cares about. So even if that were the case, he'd stay with Valerie I'd rather not say he'd stay out of trying to be a chivalrous dude or whatever. But we have Reina, she was captured by Valerie and Alaric, but she got away, and she's hunting down that vampire, like the one that's in Stefan's body, because he is a super dangerous one, because apparently, she obviously it made sense, but you do kind of forget, like, she killed a lot of vampires. She's like, in like the 200 years, she ended up killing a lot of vampires and sealing a lot of them in the stone, and not all of them are going to be like as slightly kind-hearted as Stefan. Granted, Stefan does have his darker side because of the Ripper side of his personality, but there are a lot of dangerous vampires that were sealed in that stone. And we also had a very interesting conversation between Stefan and Damon because Stefan is just like, I dislike you so much, brother, for what you did. It's not even just a situation with the whole scar. It's because you went to sleep. After everything, you've literally caused tons and tons of problems, and instead of staying around to fix it, you just went into your casket and you stayed there. It's like, you suck for that, brother. And then he's like, tell me the truth. Tell me how you really feel. And Damon's like, okay, we both know how it is, but fine, I'll say it. Prior to meeting Elena, I didn't care about people. He's like, I didn't care about changing. I didn't want to change. I was fine being the way I was. It wasn't until I met Elena that made me want to change to be a better person. So it's kind of sad that he said that because he's like, yeah, I am selfish. So that's just the way it is, brother. Which he brings up a story, because Stefan brings it up. He's like, you remember how we used to play hide and seek? And Damon's like, how you'd always hide in Dad's office and cheat and hide in Dad's office. He's like, I wouldn't do it. He's like, you do that all the time. He's like, then why did you never come find me? He's like, because I didn't, I was afraid. He's like, oh, you probably wanted me to get in trouble, which is not like, no, like Damon feared their dad, and he would never push their father onto Stefan. He's not that type of big brother. He's like, I feared for you, because that's one reason why he never found Stefan. Because if he found Stefan, that meant their dad would find out, like, oh, you've been in my office without my permission, and Stefan would be, have to face his wrath, and he wouldn't wish that upon his brother. So it's like he says it himself. Like, he's like, even that Damon's like, even my selfishness surpasses you, brother, because even before Elena, I didn't care that much about you, which I think is total horse crap. Maybe not as much when he was like, he says that, but even he always does try to do the best thing for Stefan, whether Stefan realizes it or not, because there was a time Lexi, like, he was going to go off, going off somewhere with Stefan at some point in the past, but Lexi kind of talked him out of it, because basically saying that Stefan is better off without him type of situation. So Damon kind of bailed. Like, Damon always does the best for his brother, especially in the regards when it came to their father. So you probably saw it more so when he was human, but no matter what, he might be selfish, but who isn't selfish? We all make our mistakes, but you can't say Damon doesn't try to make up for those mistakes, because you're like, he can try, he might, he still ends up messing up. And I don't know, I'm a little more sympathetic when it comes to Damon. It's like, he's a man that found something in life he wanted, and he fought for it, and things may not have always gone the way he wanted it to. It may not have gone the way everyone else wanted it to, but still, can't fault him for having his desires. But like I said, I guess you can when his desires end up screwing over everyone. So, but Stefan is running out of time. I think near the end of the episode, Damon was like, he has about 48 hours left until the body he's in completely gives out. Now, moving on to this week's episode of the originals, which I'll start off by saying a very interesting thing. It seems like obviously the Vampire Diaries and the originals kind of keep their story separated. Events in the Vampire Diaries don't necessarily affect the outside world. Usually everything that happens is confined to Mystic Falls. There are exceptions, obviously, like when the other side collapsed, that affected everywhere in the world, not just Mystic Falls. But because we see that the 3-year time skip is only in effect in the Vampire Diaries, because here maybe eventually they'll translate over, maybe in like the next season, hopefully, if there is one, which I'm hoping there is, maybe it'll translate over then. But currently we're still in that that time that Damon's asleep, because Elijah and Finn went to Mystic Falls, and they ended up running into Matt, and Matt's like, I just ran out all the vampires in town. So it's still, sometime after he kicked Stefan out of town, as well as the other vampires. So it's somewhere in between that 3-year period still. So very interesting. Find out what Lucian's up to. Apparently the ancestors, he made a deal with the ancestors. He will kill the Michelsons, but they have to help him out. They have to give him access to Vincent the Regent, because basically he wants to recreate the spell that Esther used to make the Michelsons the originals, except he doesn't want to be the originals. He wants to be the original 2.0. He wants to be stronger, faster, and better than them. And for whatever reason, even though the witches don't agree, they don't like vampires, they agreeing to do with this, because even Vince is like, why are you agreeing with this? It's like, but he ends up taking it, because they end up finishing the spell, and he ends up taking it, and he is stronger than them. He is way stronger than Elijah and Finn. They couldn't do anything against him. And I thought it was interesting how he did take a second vial. The moment he took that, I was like, he's taking one for Aurora. And I was waiting. I was like, oh, is he going to take a third one? I was like, oh, no, he didn't. Because he doesn't give a crap about Tristan. He only cares about Aurora. So I knew he was going to do that before the ending. I was like, the fact is he took a second vial. So that means Aurora's out. and she's like him, so Cammy's gonna have to watch out. Cammy was right about that coming to bite them in the ass, and I kind of figured it was too. I mean, Lucian's whole reason for doing all of this is revenge, mainly because Klaus took Aurora away from him. That plus all three of them had to run like for centuries trying to get away from um, Michael, because they were compelled to believe that they were Lucian, Tristan, and Aurora were compelled to believe that they were Elijah, Rebecca, and Klaus. So having to spend all that time running because of them, it just fearing for their lives and everything, being hunted by Michael, it's enough to garnish resentment towards the Michelsons. So. And now that he has his love Aurora, which I feel like I don't know like how that situation is going to play. I feel like even Aurora is going to be a little hesitant to kill Klaus, because there's still a part of her that still loves him and still hopes that he'll come around. I feel like no matter what happens at the end of it, Klaus will kill Aurora this time. That or Cammy's going to do it. I don't know. Which I thought was very interesting in this episode. I'm like, kind of going off that real quick. Is the fact is that Klaus and Hayley were kind of sticking together. She was like, oh, go back to New Orleans and help out there. He's like, no, I'll help you out here. And she was actually kind of shocked. And he even brought up the fact is that he was starting to enjoy her carpool karaoke. And she's just kind of like, almost kind of giving him a look like, shut up. And it's nice seeing them bond like that, which makes me wonder, possible Klaus and Hayley? I mean, granted, yeah, they hooked up, but it was never like a relationship like they cared for each other. It does seem like he is legitimately trying with this whole situation, because he's like, okay, because what happened last episode, like trying to do the best thing for Hope. So he's showing that to Hayley, and Hayley's like, I appreciate it, that you're showing me that you're making an attempt. And it's very interesting because I'm curious, like, it'd be kind of interesting if that was the case. I mean, granted, that probably caused problems with Elijah because of the whole her and Elijah thing. I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into this situation. I thought that'd be kind of interesting if that was the case, though. Like, because they've never really liked each other. It's kind of like a one-time thing between them. And, they've never really liked each other. But it'd be kind of interesting if they kind of, like, came around and just actually fell in love. I mean, granted, there's the whole Cammy situation, which is like, Klaus still loves Cammy, and, Hayley still loves Elijah. Like I said, it's an interesting thought. But there was that whole situation when they looked at his, a lab that Lucian had. He had all those wolves captured, and he had that vampire. Essentially, what it ended up being was he was sucking their venom out and he was testing it. That's how he was making his cure. But it's not just that. Basically, he taken the venom from like 7 prominent clans of like werewolves. One being like Hayley's from the Crescent clan. So like other clans like hers, there's like 6 other powerful clans like hers. Took venom from each of them, because I was under the impression he was going to make hybrids, like a group of hybrids, which technically he did when he made himself kind of an original. Basically, he turned himself into hybrid, and basically he ended up mixing in the poison from all 7 clans, and ends up making a poison that's extremely dangerous. It ended up killing Finn because even Klaus's blood wasn't enough to heal it. It's like he's a freaking pure on monster now. There was like some very interesting things with Finn this episode, because Finn says like one of the reasons why he holds such resentment for the family is because they literally had him locked up in a box for 900 years. Elijah is like, we don't have a concept of time. He's like, Finn is like, when you're frozen, when you're stuck like that for centuries, you get a concept of time. It's like, because Elijah and them have never probably been daggered more than maybe 100 years, maybe a few decades, but he was daggered for 900 years because they betrayed him. It's like, well, you wanted to destroy our family. Well, I have extra motive to want to destroy you guys now because of this whole situation. But, it's really sad because even at the very end, that's the beautiful thing about the Michelson family. No matter how much they distrust each other, no matter how much they hate each other at one point, they always come back because family's always very important to them, and they're always there for each other. Even Klaus despising Finn as much as he does, still fed him his blood trying to cure him, and it's just like, holy crap. I'm really sad Rebecca wasn't around to actually get an opportunity, to say her goodbyes to Finn, be there with him. Because the last time she came across Finn, wasn't in the most favorable situation. He was in Vince's body doing a whole bunch of crap, so it's kind of sad that, she won't get that opportunity to say goodbye. Everyone else kind of got their chance to say goodbye. And we have Davina finding out that basically Cole has been cursed by the ancestors. They're using him for God knows what. They're basically dry. The reason why, like, Cole even said it himself, like, the bloodlust and just his anger, it's way more than it used to be. Now he doesn't, he can't control it. Like, and it seems like there's a reason for it. They're using him. They're doing that to him on purpose. And Vincent's like, we got to stop the ancestors. They're like way out of control. Because it's like, what are they doing? You literally set this whole situation up. You're like, okay, you want to get rid of the Michaels. Okay. But you helped create a monster even worse than the Michaelsons. Maybe there was something a part of that spell that lets them control him and making him their ultimate weapon. It's like, but why would you? Because that's the only reason I can think that you'd want Lucian to be as powerful as he is. Because if he's as powerful as he is, no one can stop him. Because, he's better than... Because the originals, at the very least, could be stopped by the White Oak, Other than that, there's nothing else in existence that can kill them, so... It seems like he doesn't even have a weakness either, which, a part of the ingredient was the White Oak bullet, so does that mean that's gone forever? Because that means it can't be used again? Granted, as powerful as Lucian is, he probably can kill them whenever he wants to. He probably doesn't actually need to act. Well, I mean, yeah, he definitely can. We've seen he actually can kill them now without having need of the bullet, so it's kind of like... I don't know, but it's like, what are they thinking? I can only, like I said, I can only assume it's because they have some way of controlling him, and that's how they're going to. He's basically their lapdog. But Vincent and Davina, Vincent brings up to Davina, we have to stop the ancestors, we have to take them down. So, it'll be quite interesting to see where everything goes from here. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.